And welcome to another ChiroSecure live event. I'm your host of today's show, Dr. Alan Weinstein. I'll bring on Dr. Stu Hoffman, the man responsible for these live events, in just a second. ChiroSecure, the leader in avoiding claims, backed up by the best malpractice defense. ChiroSecure's live events educate and support you, the practitioner, by making sure you have the information you need to protect you, your practice, and your future. At the end of the show, I'm going to show you, if you're not already a ChiroSecure client, how to save 10 to 40% on your current premium, because more choices save you money. If you're watching this on our live event page, please look below the video. You're going to see our Facebook like button. We'd appreciate if you would click that button. Today we have with us two doctors, Dr. Michael Viscarelli and Dr. Jeremy Hess. We're going to talk about building relationships while minimizing risk. Both doctors are the co-founders of AMPT, of Launch Tour, of Minute Mindset, of the Jumpstart program, and now also the Kickstart program. They both have expertise in networking, outreach, and business-to-business communications. At the end of this broadcast, we're also going to talk about a special team conference they're having in Atlanta on the 15th, 16th, and 17th of January. So make sure you stay to the end, and we'll give you all that information. Dr. Viscarelli is in private practice in Golden, Colorado, and he's obtained over 12,000 contacts before he even opened up his practice. His practice grew to 1,300 patient visits per week within the first year. Dr. Jeremy Hess practices with his wife, Dr. Amanda Hess. They practice in Georgia since 2000, and they have one of the largest, if not the busiest, practice in Georgia and in the world. With that said, I'm going to turn the show over to the man responsible for all these live events, Dr. Stu Hoffman. Take it away, Stu.
Hey, thanks, Alan. Glad to be back with everybody, and I'm really excited about today's event. I know Jeremy, and I've gotten to know Michael a little bit more, but what they've done with their AMPT program is just simply impressive in terms of helping doctors obtain success through seeing more and more patients, getting them under chiropractic care. And quite frankly, isn't that what we're all about? So if we can't get more patients to come see us as chiropractors, then what good is it? Well, these guys aren't talking about it. Along with Amanda, they are putting it out there, and they're actually taking new doctors out of chiropractic college and helping them get a jump start and actually be ultra successful. I've dealt with a number of their doctors. They are thrilled to be participating with their program. They're thrilled to be in practice and seeing patients and getting out there and networking and all of the things that are necessary in today's environment to have a big practice. Now, let's face it, a big practice isn't what everybody is looking for. So what? No matter what your vision is for success, what these guys are going to share with you today is certainly going to be an advantage, because you are going to learn some simple things that you can do to build your practice and still stay safe, maintain risk, and deal with growing success. So I want to start out by just asking really both of them a question about what they do in terms of their own practice. How did they get it going? And maybe you want to start this, Michael, because of Alan's introduction of you. How did you actually get booming like that so quickly when you started your practice?
Yeah, and I'm just so grateful to be on. Thanks for having us, Alan, Dr. Stu. Yeah, when I was in school, I visited a lot of practices. I was under chiropractic care prior to getting into chiropractic school. Came from a version of chiropractic that was like a jack of all trade, master of none. When I came to chiropractic school, or got into chiropractic school, originally I attended DE, and so I learned a lot about the principles of chiropractic. I learned a lot about the philosophies of chiropractic. I fell in love with chiropractic. But after visiting so many different practices, it was when I stumbled upon Doctors Jeremy and Amanda Hess's office in Stockbridge, Georgia, that I understood that their practice from start to finish, from their home life to their professional life and everything in between, was exactly what I wanted for myself and my family and our future. I understood that they walked in total integrity. They were very thorough in their analysis of people, their explanation of their services and what they were going to do, and what the person or practice member's expectations should be under care, and allowed those people to make an informed decision as to whether they wanted to proceed in care. And so I trained under that model. I studied under that model. I literally stalked Jeremy and Amanda 24/7. I mean, there was days that I'd be at their office 6 days a week at some point, you know. And on the 7th day, we were sitting around the pool at their house, just milking him for everything he was worth. And so that's how important it was to myself and my wife Tara. And my wife came with me. She attended everything that they did, from doctor's reports to hanging out in the back office to sitting in the waiting room to like interviewing their team members and just learning everything that they did and how we could replicate that in Golden, Colorado. And so Dr. Jeremy walked with me the entire time, even came out with his wife and his kids to visit locations with me here in Colorado, and my wife picked our spot, helped us negotiate it, put in a massive marketing attack is what we called it. And the biggest thing that we did in the midst of creating the practice was we were going to set ourselves apart by practicing strict chiropractic. We're going to use instrumentation, objective finding material or equipment to determine exactly what was going on, to a proper educational system, all the way through proper recommendations and finances. But setting ourselves apart by understanding that what made us unique in our community was not being a jack of all trades and a master of none. It was being that master of the principle of chiropractic. And so that's how we corner a marketplace, by doing chiropractic. We analyze, we educate, we adjust, and we repeat. And yeah, of course, there's some special sauce in there, things that we do that make us very, I guess, very unique in how we build relationships in our communities. But you know, one of the things you had mentioned was doing it in a low risk fashion and managing risk. I think as young practitioners, we have a tendency to overpromise and underdeliver. And I think that making sure that we have everything ironed out as best we can before we open our doors, and we understand exactly how we're going to process new practice members after meeting them, how we're going to establish their recommendations and their finances and everything in between, we can stand in the gap and say, okay, you know, these are our recommendations, these are our expectations, but not overpromising and underdelivering.
That is awesome. I appreciate that, Michael. One of the things that comes to my mind when we're talking about especially the newer practitioners, because many of the people on this show know that I've had a lot of offices, and we've seen a lot of volume over time as well. The doctors that I would bring into the practice, I found that it was one way or the other. They either owned chiropractic in their heart, or they thought about chiropractic in their head. And those that owned it were so coachable and so, how do I want to say it? They were just the ones that were going to be on fire, because what you described, the way I got the message from you just now, is you already knew why you were doing what you were doing. So you already owned it, but you took that a step further, and because you owned it, you were willing to do whatever it took to accomplish the goal and get as many people under chiropractic care, and especially your chiropractic care. And that's awesome. So, Jeremy, let me take it to a different level with you, because you teach people how to create these high volume practices. And a lot of your doctors get that and get it ready to go. And one of the challenges that I hear about high volume practices, or have for 34 years, is if you're seeing that many people, you can't possibly be doing a good job. It's a numbers game. You're in it for the money and all of that. And I'd like you to just maybe touch on that a little bit before we go on to some of the networking ideas.
Yeah, absolutely right there. Stu, thanks for having us on, by the way. Michael said it very eloquently. I agree with everything he said. And it's all true, by the way. I should have Amanda on here so she can, I think he was actually stalking Amanda at the practice. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's besides the point. Listen, the thing about high volume, and unfortunately, Stu, the latest statistic, you would know better than me, but the statistics show now that the average chiropractic practice sees 78 visits a week. So, here Michael's a guy that saw 1,300 the first year. I mean, that's, arguably one of the fastest growing practices in the history of chiropractic. So we're not necessarily promoting that that's what you need to do. However, if you want to go after that, we can help you with that. But I think that, that sweet spot of 300, 600 visits is a beautiful place to practice. And when you do it correctly, and we're big on, we always say spirit of excellence, walking in confidence, walking boldly. And what that means is basically having your ducks in a row, which is one of the reasons we're on the call with you, because whether it's compliance, whether it's documentation, whether it's analysis, whether it's technique, how to train your team, when people enter your facility, I mean, everything, all I's dotted, all T's crossed, when you can have that down and a really system for that, and you can actually, have that confidence and authority about audio, about where chiropractic comes from, like you said, believing in your heart, and just delivering the goods, I mean, most people, it's like they have the advertisements and they say this, it's basically a lot of practice, unfortunately, it's overpromise to underdeliver. And so we're very cautious of, these promises. And, so when we say something, we really have integrity behind it. We're really gonna do what we say, and that's what we teach. And, we're big on really letting people know that, hey, do what you say and do it correctly, and treat others as you want to be treated yourself.
Because of the importance of making sure that you deliver what you promise and not overpromise things you cannot deliver, Dr. Stu asked that we insert one of his risk management tips about people that do community outreach, because it's so appropriate in this particular live event. So it only lasts a couple of minutes, but it's crucially important for you to write these down, and then we'll return to the show.
For those of you who use outreach programs, which run the gamut from spinal screenings, lunch and learns, or even dinner workshops, which all happen to be very popular right now, or if you join and lecture at networking groups such as BNI to build your practice, here are 6 things you need to consider. Number 1, when you share the chiropractic story, make sure you do not make any false claims or statements. Make certain not to infer that chiropractic can cure any health problem that you cannot back up, and make any promises that you cannot deliver. Number 2, be certain that any offers you make, whether a discounted service or a no-cost offer, is in compliance with your state licensing board and contains any necessary caveats for any demographic you do not include in your offer. Number 3, make sure that none of your offers fall in the realm of bait and switch, whether it be intentional or unintentional. Number 4, be careful you do not put down any other health professionals, as you never know who is in the audience. They may take offense to it or become defensive about what your statements are, forcing you at some point to have to defend yourself in front of others or even in front of your licensing board. Number 5, make sure your presentations or discussions at any of these outreach programs are not interpreted by anyone as a reason to stop medications that they may be taking. Even though that was not your intent, a layperson listening to a doctor talking negatively in regards to prescriptions may be misconstrued as a recommendation by you that they should discontinue. Make sure you are very clear that you are not recommending that, and that they should always seek counsel from the healthcare provider that put them on these medications in the first place. Number 6, make sure that you choose topics for your discussion that are in compliance with your board's position. You may find that your board specifically wants you to avoid specific recommendations on things like vaccinations. You can have an opinion, but always know what your board requires. It's smarter to get that information before
rather than have to answer to your board. Community outreach and getting the chiropractic story out there is a great way to build your practice. Always remember that you are not only representing your practice and yourself, but you are also representing the entire profession. So make sure you use good judgment.
You know, I think that that is the number one risk management tip that we can take away from this already. And that is to take care of people the way you would want to be taken care of yourself. Because a lot of people that have heard me speak on risk management hear me always talk about how I got ChiroSecure started. And one of the people that I interviewed who was running another insurance company said to me that people do not sue people that they like. That was absolutely true 24 years ago. It is still true today. There are exceptions, but it is always, always, always the case. So when you do what you say you're going to do and you do it with integrity and conviction, people get that. And going back to the volume, I'm glad that you clarified it, because I think that what Michael has been able to accomplish is unbelievably great. And at the same time, I don't think that people have that necessarily in their mindset that they're going to get to that point, and that's absolutely okay. But when we're dealing with volume, whether it be 150 visits a week or 3 or 5 or whatever your volume happens to be, I think that it's also important that the audience understands that they still need to always adapt to the changing environment that they're in terms of volume, and be able to keep up with their documentation and compliance and all of those things that keep them safe while they're building and building and building. So,
still on interject
touch on that?
Yeah, well, you know, we hear stories, and you know, and I don't just hear stories. I know people who, you know, they get caught up in the volume in the sense that, you know, it's the just do it, just go after it, just see people, just love the people, and I'm for all that, and Michael's for all that. The problem is they're so busy loving and they're so busy serving, which is good. It's just, you know, Sid always said, you know, and I don't want to incorrectly paraphrase Sid here, but it was, if I recall, it was like the business hand and the service hand, right, or the loving hand. So it was like, yeah, you're loving, you're serving, you're seeing people, and whether that be, you know, I personally believe that everybody can see more than 78 visits a week. So whether it's 3 or 4, 500, 600 visits or more a week, but you also have the business hand, you know, so we can't forget that business hand. And, you know, the business hand is, hey, let's be profitable. Let's have high value for our services. Too many people just serving and loving, giving it away, low value, and honestly, that typically low value, documentation follows, compliance follows, very low in a lot of things. So, and I don't want, you know, I'm not just picking people. It's people I know. So we're all about both things, and we can't forget the business end, and that's what, you know, AMP is all about, is connecting that people that are high on principle. Let's also have people that are high on profit, high on value, and high on chiropractic and the business end too. So we love both aspects.
So why don't we talk a little bit about one of the things that I know you are teaching on a high level is how to actually get out there and network in the community to build your practice. Do you want to touch on that, Michael?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Jeremy, either one.
Yeah, Jeremy, you know, Jeremy only had me do it, so it's been many years since Jeremy had to do it. So you probably have the right guy, Dr. Stu. So with that being said, you know, we realize something about chiropractic that makes it very unique than other businesses and other industries. You know, people, if you poll chiropractic students or young docs, you're going to say, who wants a family practice? And everyone's going to raise their hands. Who wants a pediatric practice? Everyone's going to raise their hands. Who wants to adjust infants? Everyone's going to raise their hands. Who wants to adjust a lot of pregnant moms? Everyone's going to raise their hands. But the reality is that doesn't just happen. People don't just roll in from the hospital, drive by the chiropractic office and say, oh, maybe I should stop in and get my infant adjusted and analyzed. That's not very common. But the reality is that if you build relationships built upon trust, that you establish this great rapport, and that takes you getting to know them first before you tell them everything that you do. So within AMP, within our circle of life, and I think within chiropractic as a whole, the focus at all times needs to be building relationships based upon trust. As you said, people don't sue people that they love. Well, that's probably true. I trust that's true, but you have to establish that relationship so that people trust you, so that people understand the intentions of your heart, that their best interest is your focus at all times. And so when we would go out and we'd go, say, network marketing, that was something that's very, very successful for me. Why? Because most network marketers or people that are going out to network meetings, you hear BNI, Business Networking International, that's just one of the companies that hosts them. But there's so many different types. The conventional chiropractor, and I did 80 meetings in 60 days, the last 6 days before we opened. That's all we were doing, were a bunch of networking meetings. The conventional chiropractor that would roll in, Stu, would come in and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I take Blue Cross Blue Shield, I'm in network with Cigna, we've been in practice 25 years, got a massage therapist, and they list all the things that they do rather than why they do it. And so when it come to our turn, and they'd throw their cards out and the whole deal, and they'd have no real relevance. They looked old school, they were old school. And we'd come in with the old principle packaged in a new way, and we dynamically communicate why we do what we do and what was the mission behind all of it. And with that being said, it would stir people's hearts. It would begin conversations, and when they'd want to sit down one-on-one with us, we would listen to what they do and how we could support their mission at home, what their business was, how we could be a part of that. And then eventually, inevitably, the conversation is going to turn back to us. And that is when we have already established a great rapport and relationship. We can explain a little bit of what we do, and we can invite them in to be a part of it. And listen, we built the majority of our volume out of the gate on network marketing meetings. Why? Because if you're going to be trusting somebody with your children, if you're going to be trusting somebody with your spouse, or if you're going to be trusting somebody with your pregnant wife or infant, you need to have a very strong and reputable rapport with that person. And so when that happens is when it makes it a lot easier for that consumer to have clarity as to what's going on and what they're buying into, and they can do it with confidence.
That's right. And one of the things that I share with a lot of the doctors is exactly what you just shared. And that is the first things first, and that is building rapport. For most of us that have done this, it does not take a lot to build rapport with somebody, but people are buying you first. Then they're buying what you're educating them on. And we can't lose sight of that because, again, that goes back to the risk management. But I want to share a little bit of a story because you mentioned, these networking groups, and I think that they're terrific. It's a great way to meet other business people that have spheres of influence, just like you do and or will. And I think it's terrific to be part of. But from a risk management point of view, I want to share one of the calls that I received, about an issue a doctor was having. And the patient actually came in for an issue that, I don't know, I would say was a little bit iffy for the doctor to have taken in the first place. But she said, hey, I've had this issue for over a year. Can you check my foot, is what it was, and see what you can do. Well, as it turns out, the doctor wound up working on her foot a few times, and he was manually adjusting, which I want to get into adjusting with you guys too. But he was manually adjusting, and he was pulling and yanking, as was described, her toes. Well, on the last visit, it really hurt. She wound up going to the podiatrist, to another doctor, and eventually sends him a bill for $850 because he hurt her. Well, I have a system I go through with the doctors in responding to these requests, but with her, we took a very hard-line stance. She happens to be the president of one of these groups. It's very sensitive. But she didn't just send him a bill for $850. The head of one of these groups made a complaint to his board. So there's no way in hell I'm recommending him give her back her money. But I did recommend that he have a side conference with her when they get together, because they are in this group and they do need to maintain, not just for him but for her too, a healthy relationship with the rest of the group. He's probably not going to bring her understanding around enough, or perhaps he didn't educate her enough at the very beginning. But these lapses of communication can cause all kinds of issues, and I'm bringing this up because I'm guessing that he did not even have a strong enough rapport with her to begin with. She had no idea why she was in his office, and that's led her to expectations that you talked about that he could not live up to. And that's when things go wrong. So I really appreciate you bringing that up and going through that together, because quite frankly, I think it's a great way to attract people in to connect with you.
Yeah, and Doc,
do you want to add anything to that, Jeremy?
Doc, I wanted to share with you real quick.
Yeah, I do. Just real quick. Sorry to interject, Michael. Michael, note to yourself, stop pulling toes, okay?
Can I share?
Go ahead.
I want to say to Stu, you know, even establishing a strong rapport with people and a good relationship with people, you know, we had one of our largest families under care because this one girl started care with us. And she referred her, she brought her grandmother in, she brought her mom in, and so on and so forth. And we ended up hiring this young girl as a team member. And after 9 months, it was very evident that it wasn't working out very well. You know, there's some distractions at home, some incongruence. So she resigned from her position, and I received a board complaint, as you know, Stu. And, you know, I had a phenomenal rapport and relationship with the family. And in fact, I saw a lot of the family yesterday, and they brought in some kids. But there's another side to the family that was like when she left, they left. And unfortunately, the grandmother filed a board complaint against us. And there's no real weight to it or merit to it. But the moment that I received is my first ever complaint that I'd ever received. I didn't really know what to do. I called you immediately and forwarded everything to you at ChiroSecure, and you immediately responded within 24 hours and was like, Michael, do this, this, and this, and resend it to us. We'll assign somebody to it. It'll all be taken care of. And within days, it was back in the board's hands. The attorney was like, this is nothing. There's really no complaint except for that they're offended that their granddaughter doesn't work with you anymore. And I just want to say that when you do things properly and you minimize risk by having proper procedures, proper paperwork, proper documentation. You walk in integrity and excellence. You're up front with expenses. There's no hidden agenda or fees. And then you have the right people in your corner like ChiroSecure. Boy, it was a no-brainer. It was a walk in the park. And even the attorney said it. She's like, well, this is really nothing. It's almost silly to have to respond. She goes, you don't understand what we see on a regular basis of types of complaints that really have jeopardized or increased the risk of that practitioner. And so I just want to say kudos to you and your team, because my wife asked me last night, she goes, have we heard back from the board yet? And I said, no, don't you think I would tell you if we heard back? And she goes, yeah, I guess so, but you're pretty busy. And I go, I haven't really thought about it much because it seems so minuscule, and ChiroSecure seemed to really crush it for us. And I just want to say thank you, because as a new practitioner, whenever it's your new thing like that, a board complaint, that's a big deal. And I know I was shocked when Jeremy was 15 years in a practice that he'd never had one. But you know, you do things as right as you can, as best you can, for as long as you can, and typically the end results are predictable.
And Jeremy, let's keep it that way. But Michael, thank you. That was very nice, Michael, and I appreciate the kind words. One, you know, I'll say this: when the doctors maintain a proper standard of care, you know, when I was talking about that one doctor that called me with that issue, you know, at some point we need to, you know, raise our doctors' awareness that you said it. We're not everything. We're not everything for everybody. We have our niche in taking care of people, turning on their life through an adjustment, and we need to stick to that. But there are times that the patient maybe shouldn't even be in your office in the first place, and it should be better communication. And we need to discern between, you know, sometimes I used to call it service versus survival. Newer doctors get caught up in the fact that they have $150,000+ in debt, and they have a new patient coming in. They're a dollar sign, as opposed to, wow, what can I do to help this person, coming from that point of service, which always brings back a greater return in terms of dollars, referrals, and everything else. And the last thing I want to say about it is I always go back to these doctors when they ask me about these issues and ask them if they've had the patient sign an informed consent, because the consent, as much as it's the right of the patient, I always remind that it is the protection of the doctor. So I just wanted to touch on that with you, but thanks for the kind words. And Jeremy, you wanted to chime in here, or do you want to keep going?
Let's keep going, absolutely. And just don't informed consent. We use whatever you guys tell us to. So, Michael called me about, he's like, man, when's the last time you had your last board complaint? I'm like, what? I don't know, man. It's been, poor guy. Poor guy.
Michael, I'm sorry, Jeremy, in your practice, do you and Amanda, since you're in the one practice together, do you adjust in the same manner as each other?
Yes, I've taught her everything she knows, so actually she adjusts pretty closely to me, actually, there, Stu. No, yeah, we actually do a very similar technique. I'm a little more specified as some upper cervical technique, and she's specified as a little more detail with some Thompson work. But we're hands-on. Note that Michael does torque release technique, and so we're more hands-on. So each technique has its variables, as you know. But yeah, we're pretty similar when it comes to that.
And the reason I asked specifically about the technique, and I know Michael does instrument adjusting, which, from a malpractice point of view, carries less risk. It's not, no one is immune, as Michael illustrated with the board complaint. No one's immune to complaints or lawsuits, but we always talk about minimizing risk. And even with the techniques that you're doing, that's terrific, and it talks about specificity. What we get in terms of injury, common, especially with newer doctors, are broken ribs. Well, you're not getting that with an instrument adjustment, but what I find is that a lot of these young doctors, and I know you work with them quite a bit, they think that they have to have an audible in order for the patient to feel like they got adjusted. And again, we always go back to that communication issue. But I always tell these doctors, if you don't feel like it went once, don't try 2, 3, 4, 5 times. There's always a next visit. There's always a reanalysis. Go back and see why things are the way they are. And that's why I wanted to touch on that with you in terms of actually taking care of the patients.
Sure. I think what happens is that education trumps over adjusting. And what I mean by that is that when you can educate, because what happens is the docs, if you have a young doc and they're not educating properly, and if they're not educating properly, that means they potentially they don't know that they should, or they don't know how, they lack some confidence. And I think that when the practice member, the patient is not educated properly, then you fall into the situation where the practice member, the patient's asking, then they become more pain related. And become more pain related, now they're pointing where they need to get adjusted, they're complaining about this. So all these complaints start tallying up, and then I think I would say young chiropractor, any chiropractor's response is, well, let me adjust more. If this person complains about problems here, let me adjust there, let me adjust. So they start over adjusting and over utilizing, and as obviously that's going to increase the risk of having more, potential injury or malpractice things. So our key is to educate the patients, let them know. So we're on the offensive, offensively explaining the first adjustment, explaining, we call it, some table talk, explaining what the first adjustment is going to feel like, how they're going to respond after the adjustment. This is being before the adjustment happened. And we do our doctor's report, or some people call it a new patient orientation. We call it doctor's report. So we have an office. So our systems are set up to be highly, highly educated. So by the time the person gets the first adjustment, they have somewhat of a pretty good knowledge of what's going to happen, and then even offensively talking to them before the adjustment happens, if it's an instrument adjustment, what that's going to feel like, if it's a hand adjustment, what it's going to feel like. They may experience a few things after the adjustment. Here's the possibilities. Then we do a phone call. After the first adjustment at night, we do a phone call follow-up. So we do multiple phone calls, which because a lot of times, sometimes the patient thinks something's happened, but nothing actually happened. But because they're thinking that they have these weird retracing symptoms, all of a sudden they're hurt. Dr. Stu. So being offensive and educating properly, I believe, avoids, and I really believe that's been our success of really avoiding any type of complaints or whatnot of, you know, going in front of the board, these kind of things. So education trumps all that.
We have just a little bit of time left, and I want to ask you more specifically about referrals. Is it something that you actually ask for? Is it something that naturally occurs based on the rapport you've created and then going on and educating the patient enough for them to have an ownership of why we do what we do? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question, and you know, we're big on referrals. I think it happens two ways. The one way is just innately they get so excited about the principle of chiropractic because they never heard of it before, or maybe they've been to the chiropractor and didn't express it the way we do. So I think the one way is just they're excited about chiropractic, and you know, if you do this thing correctly, a lot of times they'll be telling us they're referring people before they even start care. You know, and I think the second way is, you know, when they have that aha moment. And that aha moment you know, as you know, Dr. Stewart, maybe it comes after their first adjustment. Typically, it usually comes after 6 or 8 adjustments. They're beginning their care process. Sometimes it comes after 20 adjustments. But there's that aha moment where they come in and they tell us how, you know, chiropractic's just changing their life, how it's made such a difference. And, you know, we take advantage of those moments, and that's when we really talk about, you know, that the mission that we're on, that, you know, look at yourself, look at the change you've had, how can we affect the community, and then we talk about referrals in that stance of, you know, who do you know that was like you that needs to make a change and needs to make a difference, and how they can connect with practice.
Yeah, and so what about if we were out in the business community, stimulating referrals from some of these networking groups and meetings and just business relationships that you encounter?
Yeah, so in that sense, you're referring to out in the community before they've even been in the practice.
Sure.
Yeah, typically we're big on offering like some type of free consultation, or maybe if we're speaking at, let's say, a church event or a corporate event, we're talking about a free assessment in the practice where they come in and get it evaluated and those type of things. So at least have them come and experience, you know, chiropractic for most patients is a commodity until they actually enter the practice, meaning that they're thinking all chiropractors are the same. When they enter the practice, then again, through the education, through the environment, and the culture being a chiropractic culture, not a pseudo-medical culture, being a chiropractic culture, our goal is to get them in and experience that, and they'll see that we're different and create more value for them.
That's great. I really want to thank both of you, Jeremy and Michael. You're terrific. I really appreciate the job you're doing on behalf of the profession. You're taking a new generation of chiropractors, the way I see it, and helping change the world by helping these doctors be very successful in their own right. And that helps all of us, because I know your commitment to the chiropractic profession is something that we share together. And what people don't know about you as individuals and as a company is, like ChiroSecure and like myself, you really appreciate and respect the research that goes on to validate and move forward what we do as chiropractors. And you put your money where your mouth is, and you have your doctors do the same. And a lot of people outside of your group have no idea about that, but I think it's something that I have a lot of respect for, because it's near and dear to my heart. And I just want to give you kudos for what you're doing out in the profession. And you know, I appreciate working together on your behalf. And before I send it back to Alan, I know that at the beginning of this show, Alan mentioned that one of your events is coming up in January, and I will be speaking at that event, and I'm honored to do it and to get to meet and greet a lot of the people that you've been helping, and I look to embrace that. And I just want to thank you for this relationship and for all that you do.
Thank you, Dr. Stu. We appreciate you and all that you guys do in supporting chiropractic. You're right. AMP has a big heartbeat for chiropractic research and giving back to the things that we love so much.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Stu. Appreciate it, brother.
Okay, Alan?
Okay, well, before you leave, just let's take care of a little housekeeping. The page you're watching this video on, if you look to the right, you're going to see a little ebook PDF that's going to have Dr. Michael and Jeremy's picture on there. If you have not already signed up to receive the transcripts and any other information that Dr. Michael and Dr. Jeremy will provide, do so now. Also, right underneath the video, make sure that you go ahead and like our Facebook page. We would appreciate that. And then if you keep looking a little more higher up on the page to the right, you're going to see what is our concierge service that you could sign up for. This will notify you of all future events and will automatically get you the notes, the transcripts, and any of the information that our speakers provide. Now, when you click on that link, it's going to take you to the following page, and this is where we really want you to request a quick quote, because we have 7 different policies. We'll give you the ability to save anywhere from 10 to 40% of what you're currently paying. You'll notice there are 3 choices. When you sign up, if you click the last choice, you'll literally be able to fill out a form. It'll take you 2 minutes, and one of our people at ChiroSecure will get back to you and be able to give you a quote comparing what you're doing now premium-wise to what you can get with ChiroSecure, and of course, that means not only do you get the savings, but you get the right policy. On behalf of myself, Dr. Alan Weinstein, Dr. Stu Hoffman, Dr. Michael Viscarelli, and Dr. Jeremy Hess, we thank you for joining us today. Again, just want to remind you about the upcoming event in Atlanta, the AMP event, the AMP Team Conference, the 15th, 16th, and 17th. We appreciate you being here today, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next month. Have a great day, everybody.